Madam President Annalena Baerbock, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is a profound honor to address the historic 80th session of the General Assembly, especially under the leadership of Madam Baerbock, Germany's distinguished foreign former minister, and only the fifth woman to preside over this assembly in 8 decades. I thank you for this opportunity. It continues a proud UN tradition of amplifying youth voices. This assembly once welcomed Malala Yousafzai, who reminded us that education is our strongest weapon against violence. Similarly, Greta Thunberg challenged the world here to act on climate and humanitarian crisis. And today, it welcomes another young voice. Thank you for having me. My name is Muhammad Affan, and I am a student of political science and international relations. I had the privilege to study in Turkey and Poland and had the honor to experience various cultures, perspectives. And I come and I stand here not only for myself, but for millions of young people across the global south. Young people who still believe in the promise of United Nations and who ask only that this promise be renewed. Distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, let me speak with you in sincerity. I stand before you fully aware of the vast diplomatic wisdom gathered in this hall. I know my words will be measured against your experience, and I accept that with humility. And yet today I face a choice: to speak with careful, cautious diplomacy, or to speak with conviction about what our world truly needs. I choose the latter. The truth that weighs on my heart is this: the United Nations stand at a crossroad. Incremental reforms will no longer suffice. What is required is not mere adjustment, but transformation. If this institution is to remain a force for global peace and justice, we must act now. This is not a criticism, but a hope. Hope for what we can still achieve together. As we all know, United Nations was founded, in its own words, to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. But what do we see today before our eyes? More than 120 armed conflicts rage across the globe. The international system has failed to halt the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. It has failed to prevent dangerous escalations, such as those between Israel and Iran, and as we saw between India and Pakistan this year. And beyond all the geopolitics, beyond all the power struggles, what truly matters is the human cost. In Gaza, more than 64,000 Palestinians have been killed since 2023 alone. In Ukraine, the death toll has surpassed 250,000. In Syria, more than 500,000 people lost their lives since 2011. Behind every number, behind everything I mentioned, behind every number there are children, families, communities that are scarred for life. Second is displacement. Today, as we know, more than 120 million people have been forcibly uprooted from their homes, the largest number in modern history. Behind this staggering figure lies the story of Asma al-Ahmed, a 16-year-old Syrian refugee. She lost 2 years of her schooling before she could return to the classroom supported by UNESCO. Asma's story is one among millions. I repeat, millions. But millions of others are still waiting for the same chance. The third point is accountability. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrant against It has likewise issued arrest warrants against Russian President Vladimir Putin for similar alleged crimes. Yet we see that the enforcement is weak. Without stronger mechanisms of justice, international law risks becoming an empty promise. And fourth is the global economy. As we've seen recently, protectionist measures are rising. The major economies increasingly bypass the World Trade Organization. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development reports that billions of people live in countries where debt repayments now exceed health and education budgets. Meanwhile, the global military expenditure has surpassed $2.7 trillion in 2024 alone. This is the scale of challenge, and this is why reform cannot wait. I propose 5 practical areas of urgent reforms. The first is peace and security. The Security Council must reflect today's realities. Africa deserves a permanent representation. The veto powers must be limited, especially in cases of mass atrocities. India, the G4, BRICS nations. Together, they represent nearly 40% of the world's population. It's fair enough to say they must have a stronger voice. Actions require courage. We have to introduce binding rules to limit the use of vetoes in humanitarian crises. Expand permanent and non-permanent seats to reflect demographic and economic realities. The second is development and finance. We must deliver on promising of debt restructuring, as agreed at the Summit of the Future in 2024. We must support bold proposals like the Bridgetown Initiative, which allows developing nations to prioritize health, education, and climate action. Automatic debt relief should be triggered in times of humanitarian or climate emergencies. And the nations of the Global South must have strong voting power in international financial institutions. The third is digital governance. The Global Digital Compact, adopted in September 2024, offers a framework for AI safety, cybersecurity, and equitable access. But we must go further. Technology must drive development and inclusion, not just widen inequality. We need a UN-led independent oversight for AI and digital ethics. We must finance digital infrastructure in low and middle income countries. The fourth is revitalizing multilateralism. Multilateral institutions must be renewed across trade, climate, health, and security. Protectionism, unilateral actions by countries, selective compliances, these erode global trust. We need stronger enforcement in trade through the WTO dispute settlement system. We need full delivery of Paris Agreement climate commitments. We need stronger cooperation through the World Health Organization to prepare for future pandemics. And we must respect international treaties and disarmament frameworks. The fifth and final area for reform is the renewal of the United Nations itself. This institution, as we know, has opened its door to youth, civil society, and academia, but too often their role remains symbolic. They must not only be heard, but truly have a seat at the decision-making table. We must prioritize conflict prevention, humanitarian aid, and sustainable development. We must guarantee transparency, accountability, and the regional balance in the UN leadership. That means creating advisory bodies for youth and civil society within the General Assembly decision-making process. It means relocating budgets towards proactive humanitarian work and the sustainable development goals. It means establishing independent mechanisms to monitor UN operations. And it means ensuring fairer regional representation in senior UN appointments. Madam President, excellencies, and distinguished delegates. Reform, as I've said, is not merely an aspiration. It is a responsibility to history and to humanity as a whole. Many of the proposals discussed today, from limiting vetoes to expanding representations, these are not new. What is new is the urgency. Words without action will hollow out the institution's legitimacy. Excluding the Palestinian representation from these very halls contradicts the very spirit on which this United Nations was established. It undermines credibility, it deepens division. China's President Xi Jinping's call for sovereign equality echoes a shared demand that the Security Council must empower all nations, particularly those of the unrepresented Global South. Even the Global North faces its own constraints. Inequality, polarization, and fragmentation continues to limit its leadership. If we fail to act, alternative models of governance will inevitably fill the vacuum, which we will see the consequences of. The United Nations must remain not just relevant, but indispensable. I just wanted to end my thoughts that better together must means fairer together, stronger together, and more accountable together. Thank you for having me.